What if some of the artifacts of our past aren't just relics of human history, but evidence of life beyond our planet? The Tuli Papyrus is a mysterious artifact that some believe could document an ancient encounter with extraterrestrial beings. The story begins in 1933 when Alberto Tuli, a curator at the Vatican Museums, discovered a roll of papyrus in Cairo. This document supposedly dates back to the reign of Thutmose III, around 1480 BCE. After Tuli's death, the scroll suspiciously vanished. And years later, Italian Egyptologist Boris de Rachowiltz claimed to have found a transcription of the Tuli Papyrus, and according to his translation, the text describes a bizarre event. On a winter day, a disc appeared in the sky, approximately 164 feet long and 16.5 feet wide. The disc reportedly emitted a foul odor and had no visible head. As it approached, people were so shocked that they hit themselves in confusion. Then more discs appeared, shining brighter than the sun, followed by fish raining down from the sky. Pharaoh ordered incense offering to calm the Egyptian god of Amun-Ra and mandated that the occurrence be recorded for posterity. The Ica stones, which come from the Ica province in Peru, are made up of a type of volcanic rock. They vary widely in size. There's small palm-sized pieces to massive boulders over 1.5 feet across. What's interesting about these stones is what's carved on them. They seem to depict an unknown ancient civilization with astonishingly advanced technology. The figures are shown in scenes with all this complex technology and medical practices. Some stones depict surgeries like heart and brain operations, C-sections, organ transplants. There's also images that suggest knowledge of astronomy, with figures looking at the stars through telescopes, and carvings of flying machines and spaceships, or at least what looks a lot like them. So how could a civilization capable of such advanced technology have existed so long ago, and how is there no physical evidence of them outside of the images carved on these stones? No ruins, no artifacts, no remains have surfaced to support the existence of this society. So are these genuine relics of a long-lost civilization, or are they just hoaxes? The Dropa stones are a series of mysterious artifacts that some claim are around 12,000 years old. These granite discs are said to feature inscribed markings that tell the story of an extraterrestrial crash landing on Earth. According to the legend, in 1937 an archaeological expedition in the Bayanhar Mountains in China, led by researcher Chi Pute, discovered 716 of these discs, along with the remains of beings with thin bodies and large heads. The story goes that after years of study at the Academy of Prehistory in Beijing, Chinese archaeologists managed to translate the markings. They said that the discs were created by extraterrestrial beings following a crash. Their research was published in an academic journal by one of the archaeologists named Su Nui, but the findings were highly criticized, and Nui was met with so much ridicule that he eventually just left the country, starting a new life in Japan, where he died shortly after. The Dropa stones are said to measure about 1 foot in diameter and feature 2 grooves that form a double spiral around a central hole. The hieroglyph-like symbols are claimed to be visible only with a magnifying glass. Now, for a long time they were forgotten, but in 1966 the story of the stones resurfaced when a Soviet journalist with a name I cannot pronounce published an article claiming that the discs contained metals like cobalt and acted as electrical conductors, even producing a humming sound when placed on a special turntable. Till this day, though, we don't know where the stones are or if they really did exist. The Wandjina are figures in Aboriginal Australian culture known as cloud and rain spirits. You can find their rock art in the Kimberley region of Western Australia, with some paintings dating back around 4,000 years. According to local legends, the Wandjina came to Earth to create, teach, and guide the Aboriginal people. Eventually they disappeared, with stories saying some went underground while others returned to the sky, appearing as moving lights at night. What's really interesting is how the Wandjina are depicted in the artwork. They're drawn with big eyes and light skin, which looks very similar to the classic gray alien images many describe in modern UFO encounters. So it makes you wonder, were these ancient spirits inspired by actual alien encounters? The Tuli Papyrus is a really cool find. The story starts back in 1933 1933 when Alberto Tuli, who is a curator at the Vatican Museums, discovered a roll of papyrus in Cairo. This document is said to date back to the time of Pharaoh Thutmose III around 1480 BCE. But here's where it gets really strange. After Tuli passed away, this scroll just vanished without a trace, and years later an Italian Egyptologist named Boris de Rechewaltz claimed he'd found a transcription of the Tuli Papyrus, and according to his translation, the text tells an incredible story about a day when a large disc appeared in the sky. This disc was about 164 feet long and 16.5 feet wide and gave off a really awful smell. Then more discs kept appearing, shining brighter than the sun. The pharaoh ordered incense offerings to appease the Egyptian god Amun-Ra and commanded that the event be recorded for future generations. Thus, we now have the Tuli Papyrus. Next, let's talk about Egyptian hieroglyphs in general and some of the odd places they've been spotted, like uncrashed UFOs, for example. The infamous Roswell incident in 1947 and the Rendlesham Forest sightings in 1980 were both said to have strange symbols carved into the sides of the UFOs. Some witnesses claimed to see what looked like Egyptian hieroglyphs on the sides of both craft, incredibly strange, and the symbols discovered on the Roswell UFO are said to have matched the ones found on the Rendlesham object. One specific design is apparently a triangle with two spheres that appears on both. So why would UFOs have Egyptian-looking symbols etched into them? In the Dendera temple complex, there's a famous relief with an image dubbed the Dendera Light. The image depicts a snake emerging from a lotus flower, seemingly held up by a pillar with human arms at the end. But you gotta look more closely to see that. What's immediately obvious to us modern folks is that this looks a lot like a giant light bulb, specifically a Crookes tube, an early type of light bulb that was invented in the 19th century. There's a pretty uncanny resemblance, really, but is it just a coincidence? Or is this ancient artwork actually depicting a piece of advanced technology? Another interesting thing about this one, the specific room featuring the Dendera light is the only one in the entire temple with no evidence of fire burning lamps. In every other part of the temple, archaeologists found residues from what looked to have been lamps, but not here. So if the room was completely dark, how did the ancient Egyptians light it up? And why would they go to the trouble of carving such an elaborate image if it was just going to be hidden in darkness? Well, maybe the room wasn't pitch black. Maybe they illuminated it with some other, more advanced method. The Saqqara bird is a cute little sculpture, but it's also led to some pretty interesting conversations. Discovered in an ancient Egyptian tomb near Saqqara, this wooden figure is around 2,200 years old. Now, at first glance, it looks like, a toy bird, but looking closer, and it also kind of looks like a model airplane. The wings look a lot more like a plane than a bird's wings. So it's got people wondering, did the ancient Egyptians have some knowledge of flight? Back in 1969, an Egyptian doctor named Khalil Messiah proposed a pretty cool idea. What if this bird was actually a model of an ancient flying machine? People have crafted replicas of the artifact to test how aerodynamic it is, and some of these models have been found to glide pretty well when thrown. If it's not an ancient depiction of a plane, that kid back in the day had a pretty cool toy. Well, we're talking about another find in Saqqara. Near the Pyramid of Djoser, archaeologists came across 24 coffin-shaped black boxes carved from solid Aswan granite. This rock is incredibly tough, so tough that even modern tools have trouble scratching it. So, the fact that some of these boxes have intricate hieroglyphs etched into them is pretty impressive. Not only that, but each box is massive, weighing over 100 tons. Some people think the craftsmanship is so advanced that it feels impossible for ancient Egyptians to have done it alone. And for those who believe in alien involvement, there's a theory that these designs came from somewhere else or were inspired by something advanced. And of course, I can't do this list without talking about the Great Pyramids themselves. Now, while I'm of the belief that ancient Egyptians were just crafty and way ahead of their time, even I can't deny how enticing the idea of extraterrestrial beings assisting in their creation is. Now, aside from how incredible the pyramids are and the mystery surrounding how they were built, we also gotta talk about where they're positioned. The three main pyramids are aligned in a way that closely matches the stars in Orion's belt. The Egyptians definitely had a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. Even more fascinating is the fact that the sizes of the pyramids seem to correspond to the brightness of the stars. Two of the pyramids are nearly identical in height, while the third is about half as tall. In the night sky, two of the stars in Orion's belt shine brightly, with the third star being dimmer, mirroring the layout of the pyramids. The pyramids are also positioned in a nearly straight line with the North Magnetic Pole, so it's very impressive that an ancient civilization had such an advanced knowledge of science, geometry, and astronomy. They had to have had skills and understanding similar to what we have today to design and construct the pyramids with such perfect alignment. And again, the size of the pyramids themselves is also just remarkable. So what do you all think? Did they have some help from extraterrestrial visitors, or were the ancient Egyptians just that ahead of their time? There's something very mysterious about this pillar in India, known as the Iron Pillar of Delhi. It seems impervious to rust, even after 1,600 years of being exposed to the elements. The pillar dates back to the Gupta period around 375 to 413 AD, and the fact that it doesn't rust is pretty impressive. Building something like this would have been challenging without advanced technology and precise chemical treatments. Standing about 23 feet tall and weighing over 6 tons, the pillar was first erected in Udayagiri and later moved to its current location. It bears an inscription in Sanskrit praising a king named Chandra, believed to be Chandragupta II. The pillar has been exposed to harsh weather for centuries, but it's still mostly rust-free. It turns out that the iron used in the pillar was made of mesowite, which is a compound of iron, oxygen, and hydrogen, which helps protect the iron from rusting, but the method they would have used to achieve this is still a mystery and makes some people wonder if certain ancient civilizations had access to technology far beyond their or even our time.
If you were to Google when the first battery was invented, you would be told that it was invented in 1800 by Alessandro Volta and John Stringfellow. Great name, by the way. But that would be wrong, because in 1938, archaeologists discovered the first true battery, which was actually created around 2,000 years ago. The batteries, made with clay jars and iron rods capable of producing more than a volt of electricity, were found just outside of Baghdad, Iraq. 3 were discovered, and since their discovery, nothing of the like has ever been found again. The exact origin of the batteries remains unclear, but what is clear is that the society that made them was either incredibly advanced or had help from someone from the future, perhaps even Volta and Stringfellow. And if that's the case, the answer Google gives you would be in fact correct. It's possible. Anything's possible.
The Saqqara bird is a small wooden artifact that was found in an ancient Egyptian tomb near Saqqara. It's about 2,200 years old, and at first glance, it's a bird. But when you look a little closer, you might notice that it looks a lot like a model airplane. Unlike other bird statues from ancient Egypt, this one doesn't have legs, and its wings are shaped differently. It's a pretty unique design that just adds another layer of mystery to the history of ancient Egypt, which is already full of mysteries. Did ancient Egyptians know something about flying? Back in 1969, an Egyptian doctor suggested that the Saqqara bird might be an ancient model of some sort of flying machine. People have even made replicas of it to see if it could fly, and some of these models do glide pretty well when launched. Now, most archaeologists think the thing was just a toy, but I mean, what if they did know more than we give them credit for? Or what if someone far in the future managed to pay them a visit, and some ancient Egyptian sculptor based this small wooden piece off of a strange, unexplained object they saw gliding overhead one day?
If Antarctica was discovered in January of 1820, then tell me, why did it show up on a map created in 1513? The Piri Reis map, to be exact, created by Turkish admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. While the map doesn't outright say the word Antarctica, many people believe the landmass located at the bottom right corner to be representative of the continent, about 34 million years ago before it became covered in ice. This was confirmed by Captain Lorenzo W. Burroughs of the US Air Force, who said that the landmass in the Piri Reis map accurately depicted the coast of Antarctica that is now currently hidden under ice. This is strange for a few reasons. 1. How did Piri Reis know about Antarctica? And 2. If Antarctica froze arose 34 million years ago and the map was made in 1513, how did Piri Reis know about its formerly subtropical climate without the use of modern day technology? Is this guy a time traveler, and if so, did he travel backwards or forwards to learn this information?
The London hammer is one of the most famous out-of-place artifacts. It was found in 1936 in London, Texas, by a couple named Max and Emma Hahn while they were out exploring. They found the hammer embedded in a rock formation that was estimated to be around 100 million years old. The hammer itself looks surprisingly modern though. It has a wooden handle and a metal head, which, when examined, seems to be made of iron and steel, materials that weren't supposed to be around during the time the rock was formed. The rock surrounding the hammer was found to be from the Cretaceous period, a time when dinosaurs roamed the earth, long before humans or even advanced tools like this hammer were believed to have existed. There are some pretty wacky but fun ideas about the hammer, one being that it could be a remnant from a future civilization that somehow ended up in the past and accidentally left the tool behind. Now we head back to Egypt with the discovery of an ancient Roman city in Luxor. The news about this incredible find was announced back in January of 2023. Egyptian archaeologists found a very well-preserved Roman city in Luxor, dating back to the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE. It's now been described as the oldest and most important city found on the eastern bank of Luxor, by Mustafa Waziri, head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities. The archaeological team unearthed a whole whackload of these ancient structures, including residential buildings, offering insights into how people lived during that time. There were also the discovery of 2 pigeon towers used for housing carrier birds, meaning this city was very likely involved in communication networks at the time. There were also metal workshops found in the city that contained whole collections of artifacts of their own, pots, tools, and a collection of bronze and copper Roman coins. Next up, we have the 4,500-year-old tomb. This is another recent 2024 archaeological discovery. I really tried to fill this list up with new stuff. So this discovery was made about 20 miles south of Cairo. Egyptian and Japanese archaeologists stumbled on an ancient Egyptian tomb carved into rock over 4,000 years ago. I always say stumbled on, like these archaeologists are just kind of walking around and they're like, oh, it's an ancient tomb. Obviously, there's more that goes into it than that. It's just the easiest way for my brain to wrap my head around it. They stumbled on it. So anyway, the tomb was carved into rock over 4,000 years ago, dated back between 2649 and 2150 BC. The tomb contained a whole bunch of graves and artifacts from different historical periods. During their excavation, the team unearthed a bunch of treasures. There were human remains buried alongside a vividly colored mask, a burial site from the 2nd dynasty, and an incredibly well-preserved alabaster vessel from the 18th dynasty. In the tomb, there were also 2 terracotta statues depicting the ancient Egyptian goddess Isis and Harpocrates, along with a stela with a man's name encrypted on it, a man named Heroides. I think that's how you pronounce it. You've all heard of the Moai statues on Easter Island before, I know, but just last year, archaeologists found a new one. This new statue adds to the nearly 1,000 that have already been found on the island. This latest statue was uncovered in a dry lake bed, the only one to be found in that location. So far, anyway. The discovery was made by the organization that oversees the island's national park. Terry Hunt, a professor of archaeology at the University of Arizona, was incredibly excited about the find and described how important it is that these statues be retrieved, helping to preserve the history of the Rapa Nui people. So with how much attention and research has gone into the Easter Island statues, why was it that this one was just discovered now? Well, they're saying it's probably because of changes in the area's climate, resulting in the drying out of the lake that was surrounding the sculpture, and they're thinking it probably won't be the last one to turn up. Next, we have another exciting discovery. News about this came out just recently as well. A ton of cool artifacts were found in Brazil. And this one's pretty cool because this stuff was discovered completely by accident. This really was like stumbling on it. So there was a routine construction project going on at an apartment complex, but then construction workers came across a pretty alarming find, human bones, and then more and more stuff started turning up. There were also pottery shards, so these bones weren't recent. Turns out all this stuff belonged to an ancient civilization dating back as far as 9,000 years ago. During excavations, they found thousands of artifacts, and not only that, but these artifacts could possibly reshape the understanding of human settlement in Brazil. The site known as Rosanne's Farm was full of stone tools, ceramic fragments, decorated shells, and bones, which was excavated over the course of 4 years of intense digging. And in total, 43 human skeletons and more than 100,000 artifacts were uncovered. Archaeologists unearthed remnants of a group that existed around 8,000 to 9,000 years ago, meaning that humans moved into the region much earlier than previously believed. The leader of the excavation stated the discovery could, quote, completely change the history of not just the region, but all of Brazil. End quote. This finding may totally change the way we look at the timing and the roots of human migration into the Americas from Asia, which is pretty cool. And we're finishing off the list with the finding of a mysterious Anglo-Saxon artifact, again just in January of this year, in Langham, England. A treasure hunter made a pretty cool discovery with a metal detector. It was a small artifact made of gilded silver. It was just under an inch in diameter and 0.3 inches in height. Apparently it dates back to the 8th century. It also has an image of an animal engraved on top, along with Celtic knot-like patterns. Not entirely clear what the object is. The Portable Antiquities Scheme, who are responsible for recording finds like this, noted the thing is similar to other items discovered in the same time period, but this one stands out because of its size and its design. Historian Helen Giak speculated that the spiral pattern on the artifact looked a lot like Celtic designs, and that the animal depicted could be a horse. Definitely what it looks like to me as well. She also praised the craftsmanship, noting that it was created by someone with a keen eye for beauty. And again, I agree. That thing, it looks fantastic.